For me, there will only ever be one Star Wars, and that's the original Star Wars from 1977. Um, I think for people my age, Gen Xers, we're not boomers, we're Gen Xers. Not that it's that big a deal. For people my age, people in our mid 50s, it was unbelievably special when it came out. I think for kids growing up today and over the past 20 years or so, you've been so spoiled for choice. You've had so many amazing movies to see, from the Harry Potter movies to the Twilight movies. I like the Twilight movies, the Marvel movies. I mean, you could go on and on. It's just one after another. In the 70s, for kids, we really had no options. There was Disney movies. I remember The Jungle Book, which was okay, and Robin Hood, which was also okay. We also had kids' movies that were really aimed more at adults, such as The Bad News Bears, which I adored. It's a wonderful movie, but I wouldn't say that it's really sets a good example. And it's not very aspirational, but it's very fun. I would suggest watching the original Bad News Bears if you get the chance. We had Sid Croft making incredibly bizarre television shows such as H.R. Puffin Stuff. We had The Hilarious House of Frankenstein. We had Captain Kangaroo. Basically, in the 70s, what you had were a bunch of weirdos. And I say that with affection. I'm a weirdo myself. You had a bunch of weirdos making shows for kids, which is fine. It's cool. But it didn't really do anything for us in terms of giving our lives a narrative, uh, in terms of giving our lives any sense of worth or importance. Um, they were just bizarre and diverting and fun and entertaining and colorful, but they didn't really make us feel deeply, and they didn't really give us a direction. When Star Wars came out, it was something so different. And the special effects are one thing. I mean, it looked just unbelievable. Um, of course, there'd been 2001: A Space Odyssey that sort of inspired George Lucas with his special effects. But when you're 9 years old, you're not watching 2001: A Space Odyssey. I mean, the sort of science fiction that we were exposed to at the time was something like Logan's Run, which is also very good, but also very weird. And Star Wars, the thing that made it special and the thing that made it different, and it's a very simple thing, in my opinion, was that it was the story of a simple, small town farm boy, kind of a dork, you know. I mean, a really good looking dork, but kind of a goofball. Someone we could all relate to, Luke Skywalker. It took this kid from nowhere, and it took him on a wonderful adventure. And at the same time, it took all of us who are watching along also on a wonderful adventure. And I can remember coming out of the theater in my little town, and there was a rainstorm, and the streets were flooded, and I felt like I had changed and that something was different. And I looked around my town, and I realized there's more to the world than this town. I think I was probably from, I mean, George Lucas was from Modesto, California, and I'm from Lethbridge, Alberta, which maybe is the Modesto of Alberta, Canada. I mean, it was the same sort of car culture. The kids in my school, once I got older, they'd like to soup up their cars and drive around and cruise the strip Third Avenue and Mary McGrath Drive. I never got into that stuff. I wasn't very mechanically inclined, but you know, I'd imagine there's hundreds of little towns around Canada and the US and all around the world that are kind of not that different from Modesto. And I think George Lucas really understood the kids from those towns and the story that they needed to be told. I don't know if he thought of it like that at that time. I think that's just the story he wanted to tell. You know, he was sort of a middling kid from a middling town who dreamed of bigger things. And he made a movie about that. And he also lived that. And along the way, I think he inspired a lot of us to try to do the same thing. Um, Empire Strikes Back came after that. And in a lot of ways, it was a better movie, but it wasn't inspiring in the same way. It was a more sophisticated movie. It was a more grown-up movie. It was a movie that had a richer story, more feeling, more nuance. It's just, I mean, overall, it's a better movie. But it wasn't important in the same way Star Wars was, because by the time The Empire Strikes Back came out, there were already starting to be a lot of Star Wars copycats like Battlestar Galactica, things like that. It wasn't special in that way. And the message also was more, I mean, it was a more run-of-the-mill movie. It was like cool people out having adventures. That original Star Wars, what it had was Luke Skywalker, the farm boy, going out into the galaxy and finding some measure of success. And I think for a lot of us, it never occurred to us that that was an option in this world. That was never a message we small town kids were being told. And I think it was very generous of George to make that movie. And I think that it was a wonderful gift to give to all of us at that time. He told all of us small town kids, you know what? You're not worthless. You don't have to have a humdrum life. You can do something wonderful. You can have a life filled with color and speed and glamour and, Wookiees and princesses and lightsabers. And, at the end of the movie, Luke gets that medal put around his neck by Leia. And I think that for a lot of us, it was a moment where we were like, that must feel really good. I'd like to feel something like that someday. I've never had a medal put around my neck by a princess or probably by anybody else. But I've had my own little successes, like as most of us have. And I think I owe a lot of that to George Lucas and the original Star Wars from 1977. I think had I not seen the movie, I would have led a more humble life, which is also valid. And I think humility and living a quiet, simple life, there's a beauty in that and a dignity in that. But I don't think I would have been happy in that life. Some people are. I don't think I would have been. And so I think that Star Wars has a special place in my heart. And I think when you see a lot of Gen Xers, not boomers, some boomers too, but when you see Gen Xers getting so pissy about the new Star Wars shows and being very, very hypercritical, I think it's because it just means so much to us. And, I would hope for a little patience and understanding. Here's the thing, right? For those of you who are Zoomers or millennials, you'll have your own movies that are going to be very important to you and that will mean a lot. And that when you're at my age, you're going to be very cranky when somebody makes a sequel or a prequel or reboots it, and you just won't get it. Trust me, the exact same thing is going to happen to you. So enjoy, you know, Disney Plus and all the offerings they're, offering you. But for me, there'll only ever be one Star Wars.